Oh, wow, this is illiterate. This week we are covering the unbearable weight of massive talent. My name is Evan. I just checked out Nicolas Cage's new movie.
My name is Taylor. I checked out a masterclass from the Transylvania International Film Festival, among other things.
Ooh! Nicolas Cage is playing Nicolas Cage in a film, a figure whose touch now is perhaps indelible. I mean, he has been in so much. He is such a part of our culture at this point.
By my count, 119 films total.
Ooh, Lord.
Yeah. And he's only 58 years old also. He's not 100. So
right. It's like he's not about to pass away. That's one of the big things is this movie stands to be kind of a testament to somebody who is really going to mean something to the medium. Whether you love him, hate him, don't care. He is a huge figure in our in cinema right now, in our culture. And so what an opportunity to take such an interesting movie and look at such a wild body of work and get into who this guy is.
For sure. Because
so come along with us.
There is a mythology to him in a way where either he's a genius or completely unhinged when you look at the things that he's chosen, or in a way people think maybe he's just nihilistic and he doesn't care what people think of his choices.
Right.
There's so much surrounding him because just so in 2018 alone, he was in 7 movies. Just that year.
Oh my God.
And then the next year, 2019, he was in another 7 movies. So he's,
wow.
What to make of him? He's won an Oscar.
And I don't feel like you're right. And I don't feel like on that note that he takes a lot of supporting roles either. I don't see
these are leading
second fiddle. Yeah, he's making 7 movies where he's almost certainly the lead in all of them. That's staggering.
Yeah, and just as to start us off in terms of who he is, and then we'll talk about this film and how it got made and how they got him in it. His Oscar acceptance speech, a big line that I see quoted by people who want to be actors. He said, "I know it's not hip to say, but I just love acting." That was smack in the middle of his speech. And is that true?
Yeah.
We'll see. Because maybe that's just it, Maybe he just loves it.
Exactly. I mean, after seeing the film, I'm like, that sentiment rings true. If the film is to be, that is very much at the center of it, is like getting to talk about this guy with the guy, getting to celebrate his interesting career. I mean, and again, you get to talk about wild things like we've covered. One of those more recent wild ones, Color Out of Space. The Lovecraft piece. One of the more avant-garde out there pieces like he's been taking recently of the Mandy flavor. To things like National Treasure, the most Disney of Disney. To things like The Rock going to Alcatraz, pulling
peak
a heist,
action,
or Con Air. I mean, this is kind of the reason, is to take a guy like this that is mythologized through his fans, that's in the film itself, and get to pluck him out of it and almost like a toy, if you will, and get to kind of tinker with him.
And in a comedic way, too, because obviously the title is a tongue-in-cheek. You wouldn't do this unless you had a sense of humor about yourself.
Right. What's beautiful is they get to lean into all of it. So the crazy fandom is exhibited in the film itself. That becomes part of Pedro Pascal's personality.
Yeah. So this film, branching off of that, was created by some of these super fan people, but people that also really love movies like Nick Cage. Tom Gormican is the director who also co-wrote it with Kevin Etten. Kevin worked on The Late Show as a writer, then was Workaholics, Scrubs, Desperate Housewives, big comedy-flavored TV stuff. They both worked on a show called Ghosted in 2018, and then that was stopped. And so they started, this is a spec script, which is not based on anything and just nobody asked for it, and they're hoping to sell it. Right. And part of their motivation for it was they just wanted to get creatively fun, kind of like Nick Cage, like his energy of not giving a damn what people think. And this is the most absurd idea for a script, to have him playing himself. And also then this secondary character, I guess it's like a piece of his mind, kind of him as a younger self, correct?
Yes, yes. I can't, forgive me, but it's as if he's playing another character he played when he was young. It's as if they
Right. So
plucked a character out of one of his other movies, but I could not remember which one it was.
it kind of is. I looked into the directors. They got
Mhm.
interviewed about it, and it's based on a infamous appearance, which I'll post a link to the YouTube video. It's Unhinged. He's on a talk show, Wogan, this British talk show, while he's promoting a film, Wild at Heart.
Oh no!
And
Oh
so he
no!
he comes in doing a front flip and then karate kicks and rips his shirt off and throws money out into the audience. He's just and
This
it
actually
yeah.
enhances it to me because I was like, is it another, is it a character from like that vampire movie or so? Like now to know it's like the single most
Mhm.
strangest talk show moment he ever had, and
Yeah.
that is like their device as his inner self.
Right, it's his
It's
younger,
like the
more brash
craziest moment
self.
they
Yeah.
saw him as a fan. The craziest moment they saw him when they were children. That became
Yeah.
their device for him as in his inner reflection, which is
And it was
absolute
also
lunacy.
yeah.
It's hilarious. I'm so glad you explained it because that definitely makes it a bit better.
Yeah, link in the show notes if you wanna see it. It's wild. But 58-year-old Nick Cage now, this was a big selling point for him because this is a thing that he was interested in confronting. It's not pretty, but he, I wouldn't say regrets it, but it's like he's not proud of that. He's like cringing at that's who he was at 26.
Yeah.
It's not who he is now. It's not what he represents. So it's interesting for him to explore that as a younger version of himself. And he also, there's a part where he kisses himself.
Yeah,
That
that's what
was,
I was just laughing about is
yeah,
realizing how this how this
yeah,
just really deepens everything about that element of this. It's
yeah.
definitely like the most like off-putting element of the whole movie, but I it was so out there, and by the end when he kisses himself, it's such a giant stab at something, at art. They're
Yeah,
going for it. I don't even know if they know what it is, but it's so much fun by that point. I'm like, that's what I was laughing about before you even
yeah,
said it. I
yeah.
was like, oh my God, this complete, like you saying like his struggle with that. It's not who he is, but he is going to own it. So to see him actually embrace it and make out with it is like it's so
Yeah,
funny.
it's something he's
Anyway.
doing. He's always doing something. You could that's what we'll find out. So this script, like I said, though, was just a random script by two guys that are in the biz. It was on the 2019 Blacklist, which is the most interesting screenplays that haven't been made yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'll post a link to because you could read what their
Right.
version of it was from 2019. But it's not
Okay.
like they could even get anybody else. They were like, we don't know
Right.
what this is. Our hope was maybe it'll be on the blacklist. At the very, very least, we get a few of our friends to laugh, or it gets buzz and we get rewrite work on another project.
Right.
If it goes
Right.
far enough, we get to have lunch with him. That would be awesome because he's so cool. They
Right.
didn't see it as actually. Of course, you want things to get
We want to
made, but
make it.
yeah. So
It
with the
seems so
writing, yeah.
ridiculous that you're not entertaining really those thoughts. That's a daydream.
Right, right. So the writing process, just a piece of it, they said that it was more so watching a lot of interviews, reading a lot of interviews, because it isn't so
Mhm.
much once you get to know about him, the characters he's playing, it's acting, and that's what I think a lot of people get twisted around with how parasocial celebrity is now, because he doesn't
Right.
have any social media. Just this past week, it had been 14 years since he'd been on a talk show. Like he
Oh,
doesn't
wow.
yeah, he was
I
on
didn't
Jimmy
know that.
Kimmel.
I
I'll
had
post a
no
link to
idea.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So he is completely in the work of it and doesn't care about any of that stuff. So when they're looking to write him, if they even did want him to actually act in it, they have to know who he is as a person, what he cares about, what he likes.
Right. Trying as much as they can to learn about him, which everything you
Mhm.
see of him is being a character. So that's a good bit of work there to have to cut
Yeah.
all that out and go, no, 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 I need the part where you're talking about you.
Yeah.
They're digging for those pieces that the daughter is frustrated with about his love for silent cinema.
Yeah, yeah, all that stuff. They they had all that in the script, but in terms of actually taking a crack at getting it made, they know we have to get studios on board. We have to get interest in this. We have to, if we do want to finally present it to him, because they had said that other people had these sorts of ideas of Nicolas Cage playing Nicolas Cage, or he gets tons of oddball stuff. But if it's like, I have this oddball script, but I have no money and no way to make it, can you help me? He's not going to say yes every single time. So 8 months of getting this going to get studios, which they were interested in, and eventually Lionsgate was the one that they got. It's a bit of a risk. It's sort of backwards, because if he's not on, then it all goes away. It's not like you can ask another actor to do it. You know,
like it's cut him out of it.
Or you can't rewrite it all to be Jeff Goldblum. You know, like it has to. He has to accept.
Oh man. Good choice.
Yeah. So the financiers, like I said, are interested, but they're like, no, he doesn't know, and he could actually be deeply offended. We haven't even reached out to him. So if you send this,
no idea.
So they said they lit a votive candle with him as Jesus when they heard he was reading it. Because there's so much out there.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And this is like you said, Color Out of Space. He had just finished Color Out of Space, and he agrees to have lunch with him in LA and talk about it. So they got one of their wishes from
very good. Yeah.
He had turned it down a couple times, even though the chatting with him back and forth and saying, I don't think this is going to work. But they wrote him a really nice letter expressing their love of cinema, how it's celebrating his work, not just mocking him at all. And there was a sequence Nick Cage revealed, which was no longer in the film, where it goes into vignettes from certain films that he was in, very quick, but all styled like German expressionism, like the black and white Dr. Caligari. The studio ended up cutting it because they said it's too far out and it makes it too long. It doesn't fit, whatever. But that kind of stuff is like, they knew that he liked that. They knew that that's what he was trying to do with his career, was to take these influences and put them in modern films. And so they really connected as people, as lovers of cinema.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. I would love to see that sequence. That sounds really great, actually.
I know. Maybe in a Blu-ray or something. If I don't know if they filmed it to completion, but it'd be. And then in terms of the working relationship, Tom was saying it's like he treats you like any big director he's worked with, because he's worked with Scorsese, Spike Jonze, the Coens, Werner Herzog, Coppola, David Lynch. Like, he's like, you're on that playing field. He's up at 3:30 exercising, and then has already memorized everything, and you're in charge, man.
Wow.
You know, like he is a professional and humble about it all, no matter what job he takes. But awesome. Just one of the differences, the big thing that took some time to corral him in with, was the fact that his family life is first. And we had sort of talked about this in Shrek, in our Shrek episode. Like, he wasn't interested in being a bad guy to kids.
Right.
In terms of taking that voice role. And it's the same thing with him being involved in Lord of the Rings or The Matrix, because this was when one of his divorces was taking place around 2001.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so he wasn't involved in, because he'd have to be in New Zealand for 3 years.
Right.
He was really resistant to a version of Nick Cage that doesn't want to spend time with his kids. Like, that's not real. Most of this isn't him. It's a projection of what people think he is. But just that plot point, I don't want people to even think that that's why I was struggling, was because I don't care about my kids. That's not true at all.
Right.
So they changed it from being, because at first he was an absentee father, completely removed. But now, like you said, it's more of he's trying to mold his daughter, connect with his daughter, which is a struggle that actually exists, and not I abandoned them to work on my art. That's not what he did.
He's in the plight of they're 16, and their interests and the pressures on them are very different than they were 5-10 years ago. You know, they're not a little kid anymore, and it's in particular they're in a place in their life that's hard to connect with. It's hard to be a parent of a 16-year-old, is what they say. And I mean, so that's where you find him, is not understanding what type of dad he's supposed to be now, because he's still the dad for an 8-year-old, basically.
So that was something that he changed, and what got
That's
it
cool.
made,
Yeah.
what he was on board for, which makes sense if because he
Yeah.
said it
Yeah.
is like one of the hardest things he's done because he's playing a quote type of Nick Cage person version of himself
Right.
that like you said, is struggling with the past version of himself and
Yeah.
back into the media spotlight in a more commercial
This is
way.
interesting too, because I had heard rumblings of another movie being made of him playing himself, but it sounded as if he was more the antagonist. I couldn't tell exactly. I think it was
Uh-huh.
based on a true story of like kid vandals breaking in and stealing his like Batman #1 comic. But from
Right,
what
yeah, there
I
was a whole
understand,
comic book heist that happened in real life that
right,
he got a bunch of stuff
exactly.
stolen, yeah.
So like I had heard that there was supposed to be a movie about that, and him playing himself was like the hook of it. So I thought I was kind of on the realm of maybe that turned into this, but it
No,
does not
yeah.
seem that way at all. But it's interesting that he's been like wading in the water of playing himself even before the script pops up even. And it makes
Well, like I
sense, and
said,
now
yeah,
I'm hearing
yeah.
it, I'm like, well, it makes sense between the two of like, well, the other one on its face, and I don't know anything about that. It might not even been, who knows, but
Real,
it
yeah.
sounds more antagonistic. This
Uh-huh.
is, he's obviously the center, is the emotional compelling part of it, than rather than you stole from me, you kids, but
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is particularly interesting that was his touch on the script, is changing it back to what type of father does he need to be for her now, instead
Mhm.
of shifting away from this absent or neglect
Yeah. And he
side.
has sons, he doesn't have a daughter, so it is removed from his real life in
Very
that
cool. Yeah,
way.
yeah.
So there is some distance that he can pull from it, but in terms of, like, you were talking about his love of movies and the styles that the film evokes and all the different things he's been in. I didn't realize that, because I didn't know much of anything about him, that he is very much inspired by the films of the silent era, and that's
Hmm.
where a lot of his acting style and cultural, expression in the medium comes from. He had said, like I said, silent era kabuki across cultures, the golden
Hmm.
age of actors like James Cagney, German expressionism. I had already mentioned Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Right.
It's kind of, artsy esoteric talk, but that's his jam. That's in spite of what some people might perceive as the schlock or the millions of movies that are just churning out. He's like, that's one of the biggest misconceptions. He's like, I care so much about everything, and even if the whole movie
Yeah.
doesn't work, I picked it because there's a scene, or it's like an album where it's like there's a song or a lyric or a chorus
Oh
that
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
hits, and it's like that's what I was trying with that. And I knew that when I signed up. And that's I
Oh,
just
that's cool.
everything is school for
Yeah.
him. Everything is learning.
Yeah.
So there was a movie that just came out last year called Willy's Wonderland, which
Oh yeah.
is
Yeah.
inspired by the Five Nights at Freddy's horror video game animatronic, like Chuck E. Cheese animatronics
Oh,
coming to life and terrorizing. He
right.
doesn't speak at all the entire film. A truly silent character, which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah, I forgot about this. I forgot. Now
Yeah,
I'm remembering the trailers for it.
I just thought it was interesting that
He
he
actually
did
did do a silent
he
movie.
he actually did do,
I
like,
bet he
this
would
is
have loved to
purely
do
expressionist.
I bet he would have just ate up A Quiet Place.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it would be completely different with his expressionist style, with his, and I think, like, I had seen, he had just done a Reddit Ask Me Anything a couple days ago, which again, opening
Oh
up the
yeah,
floodgates because he doesn't talk to anybody hardly about anything, and
that's
people had
cool.
asked him, in this specific film, he drinks cans, and somebody was asking, like, what was in the cans, and I'll just read this block quote because it was super
Yeah.
inspiring as far as him understanding the craft. He said, "Your relationship with the movie is far more important than my relationship with the movie. And so you, as the audience member, can imagine and surmise whatever you want to be in that can. That is a far better answer and reason for the can than anything I could tell you. I want your opinion as to what was in the can because that's the right opinion." So that's some of
There we
too
go.
his
Yeah.
distance to the audience, is because he's just, like he had said, his dad had told him at one point, if you really admire someone's work, don't meet that person because they may not be who you want them to be.
Right.
And that always
Well,
stuck with him. And it's why when he does meet people, he's humble and nice. And what's the work to you? I'm not going to tell you, because if
yeah.
you said, wow, this reminded me of when my daughter died in a car crash, and to him, that wasn't at all what he was trying to get
Right.
across. It
It
doesn't
doesn't want to
matter.
take that from you, and it doesn't make you wrong. That I've always subscribed to that kind of idea about art. So that's
Yeah,
really cool to hear that.
he's very much into that. And then you had asked off mic, but what else, specifically this film, him playing himself, talking about himself in movies,
Yeah,
could
I
there?
wanted a comparable of another movie where somebody is actually not a cameo. There's some
Right.
qualifiers to this, because this is pretty particular, where somebody is really playing themselves as a lead character,
Yeah.
and
So
I
you had
can't think of it.
I had two that I could think of or find, one of which you've seen and one of which I've seen. And I don't know if the
Mm.
first one qualifies, you tell me, but Wes Craven's New Nightmare could
Oh
potentially
yes, yeah, baby,
be
yes.
something to that
That's
degree.
a
Because even
great
the
one.
Freddy Krueger actor, correct, is
Absolutely,
also in
yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah. So
They
that
they go
might.
hard on that one. That's a
Mhm.
great one. You're exactly right. I think that's just as good.
Yeah.
I think that's just as good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah,
And
what's yours? What's the
the
other
other one
one?
that I've seen, which maybe is even closer, is it's called JCVD, which is Jean-Claude Van Damme. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar with this. It's in French.
I've heard about it, but I forgot. Yeah, I
Yeah.
this is like a cult
Yeah.
2000s rumbling, I remember now.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's him as himself as a struggling actor dealing with family issues, which his real life mired in controversy with his family and cheating and everything, and
Mhm.
multiple marriages. But he goes to the post office slash bank to try and get money, and it's in the middle of a heist, and him as the actor in this crazy scenario. And there's a ton of meta textual stuff where it's like,
Yeah.
not to spoil anything, but the most impactful thing is like at a certain point, he rises up through the ceiling and you see the stage lights, and he goes on this
Yeah.
extended monologue about art and performance and who you are as a person. It's like pretty out there,
Yes.
but it's the
For
closest thing I could think of to this.
That's
Uh,
great. For anybody who doesn't know Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I think we've talked about it a little bit before on the show before, but it
uh-huh.
is one of the later Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. It's the only other one directed by Wes Craven, and it stars the actress Heather Langenkamp from the original film as herself. After the supposed film series has ended, so it takes place in our real life, but they're purporting that that Freddy is connected to some sort of real evil that will not be ended, and so it's her and Wes Craven and the guy that plays Freddy all like drudging up Freddy as this real life horror entity. It's really really scary.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it for anybody who hadn't listened. I think we might have talked about it when we did Scream.
Definitely, yeah. If you wanna see how it fits into the history of that type of
So
referential horror film, then
they
check out
even
our
have the
Scream episode.
Dimension Films. They even have the Dimension Films executive in it.
Oh, yeah.
Then we talked about, I think, in another episode. It's so bizarrely meta. I'm so glad that you brought it back up.
Yeah.
Those are great examples. Now I'm like, there's probably more than I'm just not thinking
Yeah, there's not a good, because when you look it up, I tried, trust me, it's you just
about.
find cameo of this and yeah, there's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really
yeah,
this
yeah.
sort of thing. But speaking of, being in the film business and referencing it, let's talk a little bit about Nick Cage and his history and life and his trials through the film business, because I just know him as the meme that he hasn't even been involved in. He's surprised that so much has gone on, and he knows,
Right,
the Nick Cage
right.
Rage compilation, and he's because he is so agreeable and accepting of an audience and their opinion, he's like, "It's great. Just if you like those 4 seconds, there was a 2-hour context behind it, so maybe go watch the movie too," but he's very gracious to people. But I think a lot of that stems from his upbringing. So his father, named August, was a professor of comparative literature and showed him Fellini and German cinema and whatnot in his upbringing. So that's how he got the high art sensibilities
Yes,
of it all.
yes,
His
yes.
mom tragically institutionalized very early on for schizophrenia and
Mm.
depression much of his youth. She was not there, and they
No, I
divorced when
didn't
he
know that.
was Yeah, when he was 12.
Mm.
But the rest of his family, his grandfather won the Oscar for the musical score to Godfather Part 2, and his uncle Francis directed, which, of course, the Coppola family, the legacy of all of them, branching out. There's a whole Wikipedia page on the family tree and what they're all doing and what they all did. But he changed his name so that he would not be involved in the nepotism and people referencing him and all the other stuff that his family was doing.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, early on, he did it in his 20s. He was like, maybe even late teens. He was like, I don't want to be.
Got to forge your own path.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know where the cage comes from?
No.
It is in honor of two things, which really sums up his sensibilities. The avant-garde musical composer John Cage, which did that famous 4 minutes, 33 seconds where he just sits at the piano and you listen to everything going on around you except for what the music is. So that's where he gets it. And then also famed black superhero Luke Cage. That's
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because he loves comic books, yeah. So it's kind of cool that it's like the commercial mixed with the avant-garde. He's such an eccentric person. Of course he would pick that name.
Even that name is a perfect example of the persona that is Nick Cage. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So once he does that, he basically just spends the next 40 plus years of his life on film sets. And that's been what he's doing. So obviously can't get into all 119 films, probably won't even name most of them in this, but starting out, in a way, he's come back to his roots. He started out the drama, independent, like his styling's never changed in that way.
Mm-hmm.
In his earlier stuff, won the Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas, which was a super low budget, couple $1 million.
Right.
And championed that, and then shifted, but still trying to input his expressionist style of acting into the adventure genre. Boom, National Treasure, The Rock, Con Air, like you said. And he was like, some of these things I should have been fired for. Like, I'm grateful that they let me, some of my co-actors were not happy at all with how I was approaching the craft. But he's always stuck with going 100% in on the characters, finding the intense emotion, acting it in an expressive way, how he sees it.
Yeah.
Challenging himself with different roles. The split from Hollywood, which is, I think, how most modern people know him. He had started, he said, reading philosophy. His personality is encapsulating a lot of that. He's not interested in going to awards or selling himself in the same way that other people in this boom time are. Two big things happen at this time. So he has 3 movies in a row that are very much duds. Sorcerer's Apprentice, Ghost Rider, and Drive Angry.
Right.
All
Knowing was the one that for me where I went, it's starting to head down, starting to make some really flat decisions here. That was the one I remember going to the theater, going like, "What in the world? What in the world is this?"
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too. He was saying it's like the Hollywood world is not what he had come out of and not what he was interested in. Like the risks that independent drama films can take. He says like the training roller skates on wheels, say the line this way, act this way. He wanted to explore acting, do different takes. They say, no, we got it. All that kind of stuff. Also, at the same time as this is happening and the roles that he's taking are not working out in this system, the financial woes are hitting in 2008, 2009. He had a lot of wealth. At one point, it was estimated he was worth $150 million. And he was not frugal at all. Lavish spending. Owned 15 residences at one point, from Las Vegas to castles, plural, in Europe. He bought a deserted island.
Are you saying he has owned 15 places, or at one single point? He had 15 at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's probably owned, like you could say, maybe dozens of properties or close to that, But at one point he had 15 all at the same moment.
Yeah, houses, castles, an island. He had to sell it all. He also owed millions in taxes and loans. He sued his business manager because they're supposed to be managing his, like he's like, how am I on the hook? I mean, also, it's his own doing in a way too. But I also did want to point out, because I looked into this, he's also on several lists for being one of the most generous celebrities. He donated millions for Hurricane Katrina relief. He had a house in New Orleans.
Right.
And he is
that rings a bell. I do feel like I hear that a lot, actually, of his name popping up.
So with this economic strife, I think a pretty noble thing, I suppose, is he didn't want to file for bankruptcy, which so many people said, just do that, just file for bankruptcy and get out of it. He was like, I developed this mantra.
And admit defeat.
Yeah. The mantra that he had, he said, I never had a career. I only have work. And so he's going to work his way.
Some version of that is in the movie, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He's something about the way he views his career. It's never been a career. It's just work, or
it is. Like that. And so with this, he's like, I'm going to work my way out of this. He's like, I don't want to be the guy sitting by a pool drinking
act my way out of this hole.
Yeah. And so after his financial debts needed to be paid around 2010, he has appeared in 46 movies. And this is where I think he gets, like I said, that criticism of like, oh, so you didn't care about what you were in.
No. This is where he's like, no, this is where he's showing you his vinyl collection and being like, and this one, that scene on page 46, I read that and I said, I gotta be in this, baby. Here, let's check it out. Skips to the scene.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. So bringing it back to the family stuff, his dad passed away in 2009, who he was very close with. And then he's also, at the same time, he said he's spending $20,000 a month trying to keep his mom out of a mental institution. Like all of that is also happening at once on this.
Oh, man.
And so another misconception that he said in this time, which he was almost ahead of the curve, is the video on demand days, where a lot of people are like, his stuff isn't even coming to theaters. And he's like, I didn't see it that way. Look at now, everything is streaming and it's terrific.
Yeah.
And people thought I didn't care and I was just trying to get money to make them, to put them on a VHS. But he's like, I saw it as a family is not going to the theater spending $100, including snacks. Save it for a couple months and buy a TV.
Totally ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Completely ahead of the curve on that kind of thing. Around 2014, 2015, he's doing streaming movies. And at that point, streaming is not what it is right now. And it's like, is that the only movies you can get? And he's like, no, I'm on the forefront of the medium. This will be the medium soon.
And he said, like we talked about,
he's totally right. And it swung all the way around. It was this amazing swing where we're looking at it going like, what is he doing? He's in these very strange movies. And it swung from, these are the movies that couldn't get theatrical releases, to these are where the interesting movies are. Mm-hmm. These are where the interesting filmmakers are cutting their teeth. And they are able to get somebody like him. Maybe it's worth like, maybe we should go check out Mandy. It's not going to be what we see at AMC, but it's going to be colorful and rough.
When I saw
it's an amazing pivot. Somehow being in this corner where everybody saw it as, he's taking cheap movies, and then somehow it all swung to him. He was totally ahead of the curve. It swung to him. No, these are the movies where young filmmakers are really getting to experiment.
Right. And because it was his love of movies, not just all the things going on in his life. And to me, like I said, the noble pursuit of like, I'm not like, think of his family. He's like, no, I'm going to work my way out of this. That's crazy. Yeah. That's a crazy way to think of it. He also said it was the best acting class workshop I could have for this decade of getting out of the hole of all the money I lost. So this is the last part of this, getting into the memes. Because also around this time, YouTube has come out.
Yes.
People then can take these moments plucked out of context and splice it into a farce of all of his crazy acting, the rage Nicolas Cage, or he's either whispering or screaming. Again,
now
there's
all
like,
you see is the eyebrows.
Yeah. All that stuff. And then just he's a very interesting, eccentric person who is interested in a ton of stuff, which is where all the mythology around all the crazy stuff he's done and bought happens, is because he just is curious about a lot of things. Like he's curious about a lot of movies. So like one of the ones when they were filming Mandy, they filmed in Belgium. And during one of the weekends, there was a interesting film festival going on in Kazakhstan. He was on the continent. So he went to that film festival. He wore traditional Kazakh dress. And then it became a joke where it's like, why is he wearing this Kazakh traditional dress? It's like
because he's nice.
yeah, and
he was traveling and doing what you do when you go,
and he's watching
cultures,
independent films in Kazakhstan. Like, what a great guy!
He's not making it about. Yeah, he's not. He's literally not making it about him. He is adorning himself in the culture and trying to go like help their exhibition of the medium he loves. Come on.
Yeah, and has no social. Somebody else took the picture and posted it, and then they shop it in. There's a whole Reddit subreddit called the One True God, and like all the posts are like went to worship today, and it's a picture of a ticket stub. It's like,
oh my god,
it's a mess. And so he had said, he's like, I've seen obviously the sequin pillow, which is it, like you said, is in the script. Like they embrace it. Yeah. His whole thing, he's like, I ask why, and his take on it, he's like, it must be something to do with the characters, the facial expressions. Like I said, he wants to break free of naturalism. It's more abstract. It's more expressionist. It's larger than life. And he's like, in a way, I think people relate vicariously. They want to act out. I am doing I am really going outside of the norms of real life.
That's exactly what Jim Carrey said. He said that it clicked for him when he realized that everybody wants the guy that lets them be more comfortable because they're doing the thing that they want to do. They don't have to do it anymore because you're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful notion. It's like, well, if I can do this, then that makes it license for you to do it. It's a weird thing how people are inspired by that kind of thing. But I just remembered hearing Jim Carrey talk about when he was like figuring out what his act really was. That was the key, is realizing that, going to that extent actually put people at ease because he was going to the place that they thought about or that they related to.
Yeah. And I think the word inspirational that you brought up, the second part of that almost has to happen with it, is Nicolas Cage does it and does what he does without regard to how it's going to be received either, which is how you can make 119 movies and love the work. Because if you cared that people liked it or not, what you did, you can't have both almost,
Yeah.
You can't.
That's that you're assuming the role. I'll be the guy. I'll be the guy to do. I'm going to be the guy, so you can put it all on me.
Yeah,
it's an interesting way to look at performative art. Is the removal of the self being kind of like the vessel for all of the wills and wants, which really relieves everybody else because they're not worried about will they have to do it, but you're doing it, and it's a very cool. It's a very cool way to look at performative art.
But I think the way that he can sustain it, too, in his way, is not this sacrificial sense, because he loves it. You know what I mean? Like, he's always wanted it. That's what's so cool about it, is he's
I don't mean to make it sound so sacrificial. I'm just trying to depict it. It's definitely not that. It works when you find people who derive, like some sort of accomplishment or happiness out of being that person, and you have to be the guy that's willing to be the guy.
Yeah. So that's what's so cool, I think, and why he's such an enigma. And I saw this from a article that I read about him. They said he's a sincere man in an ironic world, not the other way around. And that's, I think, where the misperception comes, why he's on all the memes and whatever, because it's like, oh, look at how ironic he is. Look at how bizarre he is. And people think they're sincere. But it's like, he just loves what he's doing. Also,
no, he's being sincere, and you're turning him into irony.
Yeah. Lastly, speaking of the sincerity, so a year and a half ago, which again wasn't really released because nobody cares, he paid it all back. He didn't file for bankruptcy. The millions and millions that he owed. He kept his house in Las Vegas. Wow. So that's where he's been living for 15 years.
Okay.
He's been chilling there with his talking crow and his Kung Fu lounge suit and all the oddities that he has.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Yeah. And he's just, going to keep doing. He's talking about the next film that he's in. Of course, he's already in another one that they're working on where he actually plays Dracula. So he gets to do
Thank God.
expressionist stuff.
I love it that this guy has been in so much. He's done everything, and he can, from 1 second, he can be in something as wild and avant-garde as Pig.
Yeah.
And then just not too long before that, he's in the biggest Spider-Man movie until recent.
Oh yeah,
he gets to be in Spider-Verse, and even that character, like, what a perfect character for him to be. But like,
it's black and white. Yeah, it's what he wants.
Exactly. But for somebody to be able to go back and forth, to be able to go do something like, I'm looking at his IMDb right now, it's the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and then Color Out of Space is just a title up from that. And just going through, it's like, The Croods 2020. So he hit one of those big studio animation things in the middle of it, and then on to Willy's Wonderland, Pig, and then Unbearable Weight of Mountain. I mean, I was explaining his career to somebody who was just learning about Massive Talent as a movie. They saw the trailer, more of a boomer, and they were asking, like, I thought his career was on the way out. And I said, oh, no, it's kind of turned into this whole other thing where he has total freedom to be and do whatever he wants. And he's able to do and make movies happen that are as interesting and cool as this one.
Definitely.
So I think there's a lot of that misconception right now, or not understanding exactly, older people who were, really huge fans of him in the 90s might not understand exactly all the streaming, so to some people it still looks like maybe he's on it's like, no, he's as free as he's ever been, and he's doing probably his best work. And what an amazing opportunity to be able to celebrate him at this age. I feel like too often it's these things that are hindsight after the fact, while these people are moved on and gone. He's here. He's still, relatively speaking, he's youngish, I mean?
What's interesting, it kind of reminds me, tying back to his love of comic books, and we talked about it in several episodes, but just the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of the tastes and zeitgeist. And comics held on through. They still adapted to what people were going for, but I feel like in a way he's that way too, where it's like he never stopped trying to do his expressionist, kabuki, silent actor as modern actor practice. It just ebbs and flows with the time too. He was doing that in National Treasure and National Treasure Book of Secrets. He was massive. He was a character, but like it just comes back around, and the type of roles that he takes. Yeah. He's not weird. We're weird, I guess.
Yeah, we're weird. We're weird for not loving what we love outwardly and as freely as he does.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Taylor. This was a blast. Thank you guys for listening to this. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope it wasn't too much of a deviation off of our stuff. We thought this was a really colorful, fun thing to get into. So thanks for walking down Nick Cage Lane with us.
An adaptation of a human. Yeah.
Yeah, good Lord. On that route, man, not just another adaptation, the movie stars Nick Cage playing a writer, a real writer, who also has another internalized version of himself that he's playing against. Very, very heady, incredible Nick Cage movies. Probably one of my absolute favorite Nick Cage performances. Definitely. Adaptation. So,
and that's the contrast of independent, artsy, deep movies with the commercial Hollywood system. Yes. So it's like it's very much
what a beautiful
what he's all about.
I'm so glad that I brought that up right at the end. That's really, if there was any other thing to hang our hat on for this episode, it really is that one. That kind of says it all. It does it all. God, how much fun. All right. Get at us at @IlliteratePod on Instagram. Let us know what you're interested in. What are you watching? What are you reading? What's coming out you're so excited for? You never know when we'll do an episode all about that thing you want to know about. Get in touch at @IlliteratePod. And if you would, please smash that like button, rate us wherever you listen to us. It helps us more than you know. If you get any enjoyment out of these episodes, please give us a rating.
And then share an episode, please, with a friend. This one or any other, go down through our list, see if there's something that you like, or they might like, or they dislike, and maybe you can change their mind. But
fight with them.
Yeah. Blame us.
It really would be. Yeah, seriously, it would be great. Send them an episode, and we will catch you back here next week for all of the good facts that you're waiting for. I can't wait till then.
See you then.